So the objective of this video is to introduce you to the Run Manager facility in Veda 2.0. This can be accessed from the modules in menu or the shortcut F9. So this is actually what is most different from the old version of Veda, and we have tried to make it easier to manage larger number of cases through this functionality. Okay, so let's see what all we see here. So actually you will see it slightly different when it comes in. You will see it like this. So I had pinned this one. So broadly there are 6 sections on this form. Sorry. So this is the list of scenarios that exist in your model. This is where you define your GAMS root folder and you select the default values for your GAMS source and GAMS work times, your solver options, and so on. This is the list of regions. This is the list of parametric scenarios. And this is what used to be on the control panel in the old version. So all those properties and switches and settings of the times code. So let's start here. So you can define the GAMS root folder. Normally it should be Veda. It's been going as Veda. And this is where you have the GAMS work times folder and the GAMS source times folder. But if you want to choose a different path where you put these folders, then you can do so. You can also create a new work times folder from this button. And so this button will open the GAMS work times folder. Now, this is an important new control. Veda by default can manage multiple runs in parallel depending on how much hardware you have and the requirements of your model. So if you keep max runs as 1, then all the DD files and the scripts will be written in this folder like it used to be. But if you have this set to more than 1, then it will create a subfolder in this folder with the case name. Okay, we can not worry about these buttons for now. So that kind of completes this this section of this facility. Well, actually, you can also go to the folder where the solver options are. So this is in your model and app data folder. So you can create a new options file here, and then it will appear in that list. And okay. Then you come to this list, which is the important one, where you have the scenarios. But now before we start with these remaining 4 sections, the main idea here is that you create groups of these 4. So like this, in the old version there used to be only one case, one name that you make all your selections and then you give it one name. Here, those names exist at the bottom. And in this part, you are only supposed to grab groups that you have predefined in these 4 sections. So here, for example, you see all scenarios and you see different groups. So this group has 11 out of 42 scenarios. This group has 12 out of 55 scenarios. Actually, this number is different because of these black scenarios, because they don't exist anymore. So that's a little mess that has been left behind, but don't worry about it. And then, so you create different groups. Now, let's say I wanted to create a new group. So I can start from a previous group, and then I can filter scenarios that I want to focus on. Let's say I want to focus on all the scenarios that have to do with CO2. And let's say I wanted to include a CO2 tax in this group. So I select that, I make all the changes that I want, then I go here, and then I can say that this is with CO2 tax. And I save. So now I get a new group in my list, which is A002 with CO2 tax. Now, if I want to edit an existing one, for example, if I want to remove some scenario here, or if I want to, in addition, add some other scenario, then I can simply press this button to update this definition. So that's that. Now, so this is how you create your scenario groups. The other information you have here is the number of data points that each scenario has created. Now, base, of course, as you know, is special. It includes all the VT files and the base trans. So base is, and it doesn't move either because it has to be the first in the list. And you can rearrange your scenarios like this. And unless you save, it will not be, it will not reflect. So if you change the order, then after that you have to save. So that completes this scenario groups part. Now similarly, you can create groups of regions. Groups of regions are not used very often. Well, it depends on the use, of course, but if you have many regions, then you might be running subsets of regions. So in that case, you can create scenario groups just like we did with, you can create region groups just like we did with scenario groups. In parametric scenarios, very similar story. So this is basically the output of the parametric scenarios that you may have defined. So in this is advanced demo. So there are 4 ETL scenarios which are defined as parametric scenarios and 10 stochastic scenarios, basically the probabilities that are changing here. So I have simply created 2 groups, one that selects all the stochastic scenarios and the other that selects all the ETL scenarios. You could very well select a part of those and say that this is ETL to SEN only. So that becomes a third group. So if you use this, you'll get all 4. If you use this, you'll get only 2, and so on. And similarly, you can create a group of properties. So here I think, of course, we need different settings for ETL and we need a different setting for stochastic. So all those things have been predefined, but I'm sure you understand how you can do that. Okay, so oh yeah, one more thing I forgot here, that if you double click here, you open the file. So this facility existed only on the navigator before, now it exists on the Run Manager as well. Okay, so that completes the top half of the story. And now, so we have defined groups of scenarios, defined groups of regions, parametric scenarios, and properties. So a case now is the combination of these 4. So if you create a new case, then of course you need to give a case name. So demo case, and it cannot be more than 53 characters long. You can give a description. And now you have to choose scenario groups, region groups, parametric groups, properties groups. So I select, let's say I select this, I select all regions, I don't select any parametric, I have the default group of properties. I can choose the period definition, I can choose the ending year. So I choose 11 and I choose 2050. I can also change my default choice of the source times folder, I can change the default choice of the solver and the options. And after that, I can save the case. So that appears here now. So to edit a case, you double click and it will open the same window that we had. Now let's say I think that no, I didn't want this. I was actually trying to edit the ETL case somehow. I wanted to run a shorter version of ETL. So I didn't want to do this. I can select and delete this one. And okay. And then I open this one. And I say copy case. And I say this is short. This is 2 cases. And here in the parametric groups, I choose ETL2 scenarios only. Okay, and I save. So I get this short. Now, it is very important to remember that if you want to copy a case, then you should click this copy button, because if I just change this name, for example, and if I changed anything here as well, so if I then change this to 2040, and if I save, then actually it will rename this case and redefine this case. So if I don't click the copy button, then I will in a way redefine an existing case, including its name if I want. Okay, so this is how you create cases. And now let's go ahead and run a case that was already defined. So this is the stochastic scenarios. And so now I can select and hit solve. So that brings up a log window which will report the progress on DD files. DD files are written in parallel and it uses all the cores that are available on the machine. We didn't bother about limiting them because this doesn't take too long. So it will just use up everything that is available. And I had the max runs set at 12. So actually it has launched all the runs together. And so this is how runs are done. And after the runs finish, this version of Veda automatically imports the VD files and the data GDX files into the Postgres database. So basically, most of what used to happen in the import operation in Veda backend is done in parallel along with the runs finishing. And the data GDX files are very useful for a number of reasons. We'll get to that in a different video, but they are also imported at the end of runs. So these forms that are popping up are actually doing that import operation, and eventually all this output will be directed on this log panel, but for now we have these pop-ups. And this, I guess, covers everything that I wanted to say about the run manager. No, one thing remains, and that thing is how to use existing GDX files in run definitions. So as you know, you can use existing GDX files for various purposes in times. It could be used to fix the solution, a part of the solution to a previous run. They could be used to pick up the base prices for elastic demand. They can be used to inherit prices and or bounds for the endogenous IRE trades, which become exogenous when you run a subset of regions. So I'm not going into the details of these things because this is only about telling you how old functionality maps to the new one and not necessarily telling you about the functionality itself. So let's say I wanted to freeze the first few periods of this case to an existing case. So this is where that part happens. So if I open this, then I get a form like this where I can use 3 different GDX files if I want for various purposes. So use solution. So use solution. So let's say I pick up this one. It tells me when that case was run, and I can choose to freeze years up to 2020, for example. I can choose to run reports only, and I can also choose to use this as a starting point and not say anything about fixing. Okay, so that's that. In Elastic Demands, I can similarly pick a GDX file for picking up the base price of demands. And this is where I can select a GDX file to inherit prices or bounds from if I'm running a subset of regions in a multi-region case. Okay, so now I think I have covered everything that I wanted to in the new Run Manager. Thank you.